right, so this is part three. And so you were going to say,
Well, I kind of want to make it relatable for whoever listens to this too, because when we talk about specific experiences, I think it's easy to lose perspective or context. And originally it's really we would started off in part one, kind of how to break through
right,
with others in a sense from a leadership position, but
right,
then really how to break through for yourself.
right.
And so we've gone through a lot in parts one and two, and then this example you were giving about uh, yourself and your wife, and I follow you completely. So, but I was also thinking what it's like to be that person, because I've had similar experiences to you, and in that sense, what you were describing about the way about yourself, I use slightly different words, and come to slightly different conclusions. You said you're arrogant and prideful, or something like that, right? And but the thought process that you have, where it's like I'm not attached to how anybody, not these days. I was when I was younger, as a
Okay.
teenager, as in my 20s. I was very concerned about how people saw me, and therefore I didn't speak up much at all. And it's only through, I guess, the developing the skill, if you will, of seeing the kind of the truth of how the world works, people work, function. Forget structures like businesses and laws and all that stuff, but in human psychological nature, let's say, um, how people think. So, and it came from how I was as a child, and then what I learned from that, and then how I applied it, and so on, and hearing and speaking to people like you throughout my life, that opened my mind up, so to speak. And so when you were describing the the prideful and arrogant, I was actually thinking, no, when I was in that state, and it may not be the same for everybody, I felt like I was in a dark room with no lights and I couldn't see the way out, right? If you think of it that way. So I see some things visually and some things thoughtfully. So it's a combination of my imagination and words or thoughts, right? And when I got lost with people like you and me today, back then, it was only because I couldn't rationalize what was going on through my thoughts. So it's not that I think you were smart back then. I probably would have said the same thing. Why are you smart, or why do I feel stupid, or something like that? Because that was often a state of my mind, I would say, decades ago, that because I didn't know. And if you don't know, until you can start to see how something works, in this instance, we're talking about human thought, as opposed to you got to learn how to milk a cow before you can milk a cow, right? There's a technique to it. You got to learn it before you can do it. And before you can do it, you can't even imagine it because you don't know. And thought, feelings, actions, just to keep it simple, are the same way. I mean, you don't know till, and I know I said earlier, it's learning to think. Well, that sounds like you're stupid. No, it isn't. No, it's not about stupidity or arrogance or anything else. It's you don't know. You haven't
Well,
learned
see,
that
this is the
far,
thing is
right?
what's the difference between ignorant and stupid? That took me 60 years to figure out.
Right,
Like,
but
so ignorance is not knowing what to do. Stupid is not doing what we know. Like,
yeah,
like,
look, if you if you took two um, uh, capable people that spoke different languages or couldn't speak the same language, and you stuck them on a not an island, but dropped them somewhere, and they had to survive together, right? They can do it without words. uh, they would survive without words. Why is that? Because the words we use with each other sometimes are confusing, because even saying the word stupid, arrogant, or even, love, the feeling of love, what is that? They're hard to explain, right? So, words that sell, words that repel. So I think when you're in that state of mind where I would say I've lost that person in a communication, right? So now they're feeling like they're in the dark, right? Whereas I'm in the light, I know what's going on, I can see what's going on, but I can't find the light switch for them. But at the same time, they got to be looking for the light switch. Okay. And because if we're both looking for the light switch when somebody's in the dark, then you're going to find it, right? But it takes two to tango, right? So if you just end up concluding in that moment that I'm stupid and you're smart, and I'm stupid because I'm arrogant and prideful, that's not that. I'm just saying I look at it differently, because I'm not, to me that would say, um, you know, I'm a victim of my own arrogance and what was the other word you used? Pridefulness. And to the extent that that in itself is creating another wall, a smaller one maybe, because now I can maybe look at it and go, why am I behaving arrogant and prideful? And that to
But the
me
thing is the thing that's weird though, Peter, is that people who are arrogant are the ones that tell other people they're arrogant.
yeah, but no, I don't want to get stuck on those words. I just want to, for anybody that's interested in listening, it's back to, in part two, we were talking about if I'm losing you, if we're losing you on the podcast and you're here for a reason, and the reason is to understand how to create more internal growth so that you can experience more external growth, because growth comes with certainty. Growth comes with knowledge and skill. Growth comes if you're growing from sad or bad to good and optimism. If growth is defined as getting better, right? If growth in anybody's mind is defined as feeling better, doing better, being of more service to oneself, to others, if that's what growth means to people, and that's why they're listening, then the biggest conundrum of all is when you hit your wall of understanding. If you're listening to this or listening to anybody that's trying to that you're looking towards to help you find a better way of being, a better way of being, better way of thinking, better way of feeling, better way of taking action, then that's that finding that way inside of oneself to not give up and go, I wish I was like you. No, you don't have to. It's not hard. It's not hard. You just got to find a trick of the mind, effectively, and stop following the habit that's led you to conclude that you're as good as you can be. It's not about saying you're better than me or I'm better than you. It's got nothing to do with it. That's why I say seeking the truth, in at least in a safe place, not when it comes to speed limits or company policies, let's say, or all of these other structures and processes that have been created, but seeking the truth, not only inside yourself. Why do I feel this way? Why am I thinking this way? Whether it's good or bad. I mean, certainly if you're thinking in a way that's leading and attracting great things to you, absolutely think about the way you're doing it, because sustaining it, because there's always a reset. You take things for granted. Life's going too good. You can bet your life you're going to be reset, right? You're going to get a kick in the teeth, knocked into the gutter, and then you're going to have to pick yourself up and do it again and not make the same lackadaisical mistake a second time. But if you haven't even got there into that flow of life, right, where it just mostly feels good, everybody you're talking to seems to be giving you a seed or two for the future, versus you're getting nothing out of it because you can't see anything, you're not receiving anything, because what you're putting out there is, I don't know, I don't understand, I don't care, I'm not happy, I don't feel playful, I'm not curious, just leave me alone. I'm happy to keep everything to myself and be the way I am. I don't want to grow. I want to just be me. I don't think that's most people, but it's really just, and it's hard, right? That's why we started off. I wanted to talk about this the last time, because it's easy when you're in a crowd of willing people. Doesn't matter whether it's 10,000, 100,000. If the crowd is with you, the majority are with you, everybody's open and learn something. But when you get down to family and friends, or even mentoring and coaching and leadership training and that kind of stuff, then you want to stay connected to 100% of the audience. But that's a two-way street. It's like, don't be fearful of asking a question, even at the base level. How do you think like that, Mark? How do you think like that, Peter? Well, give me some context to work with so I can understand where you are, right? It doesn't matter where you are. The only thing that matters is that you can say where at the moment where you got lost and you don't understand. And then that allows
What about people that are lost and they don't even know they're lost?
Well, because it's a negative connotation, isn't it? If I wasn't very happy before I wasn't in a good mood before I got on this call, right? I got a lot going on. I'm not going to explain it, but I wasn't in a good place. Do you know what I did? I did some jumping jacks to get my blood flowing. And then I was sitting here kind of going like this: forget everything that you've been thinking and feeling about for the last 24 hours. Forget everything you've been thinking and feeling about for the last 24 hours, because now we're going live, right? And I had to kick my ass, literally, my mind into open, because I was getting a little, not depressed, but
Right. So
right?
I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you for going to the third. I don't know the next time, because I feel that we're close, but I always feel close. This monumental breakthrough, like the time Tom said it, like the time Peter said, you go through all of this work. You go through all this work. You go through, make all these sacrifices. You go through all of this, you go through all of this. And then what happens? You fail. And when Peter told me that, I got excited. I'm like, oh, cool. That's the answer. That's life. That's how it is. And it's okay. That's the human condition. You don't give up. You don't quit. You don't quit.
Nothing goes right the first time. Sometimes it doesn't go right the first 100 times. Every freaking day, I'm 64, things are going wrong still.
Right? Like I asked this guy, Alvin Miller, we got to get him on. Maybe Elaine can get him on. This guy, he's 60 or he's 84, I think. I think he's been married for over 60 years. So most people think 40 years is pretty good. And it's not that it's bad, but it's not 60. So I said once to him, I said, oh, and I'm just curious about your marriage. Like, do you ever have thoughts that, man, am I a pathetic husband? Like, I should have this stuff figured out by now. I've been married for 40 years. Like, we should have like our marriage, we should not be going through this same thing after 40 years. He looked at me, shook his head, laughed. He says, oh, no, that's going to be there forever. I'm like, really? He's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, but Mark, the willingness to be a better Mark, in whatever context that means, but hopefully a holistic one, it goes on into eternity. So to the extent that, on the one hand, yes, we all have these self-defeating thoughts about our relationships or whatever it is, like you're kind of describing. I describe that as get used to it. It's a self-defeating thought, and it's only self-defeating if you're not also at the same time saying, how do I make it, the relationship, even better?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Of course, it's never perfect.
Well, when I'm, perfect, I don't think is
perfect. We're in
flawless.
heaven.
I think flawless. That's where flawless comes in. Flawless thinking is not perfect. It's flawless. No. It's less flawed. How can I be less flawed as a man, as a husband, as a father, a grandfather? how can my wife be less flawed as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a grandmother? Like, how do we go ahead? And that goes back into humble. When you look at these different elements, and we'll let you go here in just a second. But next podcast, what I'd like to do is there's a new white paper I'm working on, and it's titled Addicted to Lazy. And it's a fascinating, I mean, at least for me, it's a fascinating study. And so I wonder if trauma or abuse or really hard things, something happening really hard as a child.
Mark, can I suggest when you write, if you've written that paper, great. If you haven't, that you do it as a two-stage, addicted to laziness, but also addicted to the opposite of that. And look,
what is that? What is addicted to? What's the opposite of lazy?
Well, I think there's lots of words you could use, like industrious or productive, but I think you kind of have to pick one that is the best mirror of lazy. I haven't looked at what's the opposite of laziness in the dictionary, but I'm just saying, because I think we can all relate to, would be able to relate to whatever you write on laziness, because it is one of the things that holds us back, right? It's the same as it is one of the things that holds us back. So I think we can all relate to parts of it, which is cool. But I think at the same time, if you're going to write a paper like that, I do that
So
chapter one there first.
if you can read, I'll get this over to you. And if you can read it, because I love that suggestion. First, I have to figure out, I think first, maybe not, but okay, so what's the opposite of it? And so I think, like when
well,
I look
if you write the paper on addicted to laziness, it will be the opposite of everything you write. Do you follow me?
I do. I'm not
it's
sure.
It's like yin and yang. Because if you said laziness, I'm trying to be simplistic, laziness is getting up in the or not getting up in the morning when you're supposed to, right?
I think
be,
like
right.
why is it that people go ahead, like why is it that alcoholics go ahead and say they're not going to ever take a drink again and they do? I think what it is why do people make the same stupid mistakes? And stupid again is defined, I know what I should be doing and I don't do it, or I know what I shouldn't be doing and I do it. And so I think what it is, Peter, is I think the synapses in the brain, I think it's a pathology where it's done over and over again, where people default. And I think they fill up with trauma, and they fill their brain with trauma. They get addicted to it because it has a dopamine hit. And I like the first time I talked to somebody about cutting, I'm like, that makes no sense to me. Like cutting, why would somebody take a razor blade and cut themselves? I'm like, I don't understand it. And he said, oh, let me explain the science behind it. I'm like, okay. He said, when you cut yourself, it releases dopamine in your brain. For me, it just hurts. like it does. But he said, people who cut, it releases the dopamine in their brain and it gives them a high like cocaine. And I'm like, really? And so I think what happens is the reason people get stuck, and you can get stuck at any age, the reason people get stuck is because they're familiar with the comfortable, and they don't see the future. They don't see what they could have. They don't even know what they're missing.
Right, but so you mentioned a bunch of things, including alcoholism, right? And there's, of course, there is some, more at least science behind that. But really, at the end of the day, you become dependent, right? So the opposite of dependent, if I use that as the definition, is independent. So you have to want to become independent. It's like, a kid's riding a bicycle with stabilizer wheels on it. At some point, you can choose to take them off as a parent because you think they're ready. But at some point, if you didn't, they'd eventually tell you, take off the wheels, daddy, right? Because they want to fly. And so I think it is important to recognize, habits are we know what they are. There's good habits and bad habits, right? Some habits lead you to dependency or codependency, and that happens in relationships. It happens with alcohol. It happens with drugs. I mean, there's other elements in drugs, obviously, as you know, because it's like food is a drug, the way we process it, because it creates chemically a chemical addiction, right? And but that's why alcohol is a little different, because you could say you can change your mind and decide, I want to be independent of alcohol and only choose it when I want it for the pleasure that it gives me by having a couple of glasses, right? Whereas alcoholics know generally the best way to become not be an alcoholic is complete celibacy, right? And I guess you'd have to say the same with a sex addict or any reading addict, any kind of addict. Well, it doesn't have to be.
Well, see,
It
this
doesn't
is
have
what
to
my
be that
theory on
way.
any addiction. It doesn't matter what. I was in Louisiana speaking, and before I went there, I called some business owners in the area, and one of the business owners owned a TV station, and I said, "What's the biggest challenge you're facing in Louisiana?" And he said, "Addiction, like drug, alcohol, that kind of stuff." And I said, "My theory on addiction is every addiction. The root of that is entitlement." Everything. He says, "Really? That's fascinating." He said, "Explain that more to me." And I explained the whole thing to him. He said, "I have never heard that in my life." He says, "Do you want to do a TV show? Do you want to do a TV show on that, or a radio show, whatever it was?" He says, "Do you want to do a show on that?" I said, "Sure." So when I was down there, I did that. And so, but I can see it. It's like, and that's where I think people who have been abused or trauma, it like the brain says, I'm entitled to feel this way without really doing any work. And so I'll get you over. I mean, there's so much more. Any
Well,
other
that's in a sense back to victim, and look, and of course we're talking at a level now which is analysis, right? So, again, if we're trying to connect with people that this either it's speaking to and they understand it, but I think when we started part one of this, it was like, how do we break through? How do you break through?
flip the switch?
Because yeah,
Yeah, flip the switch. Yeah.
yeah, flip the switch. So it's back to, and I use the term when you were talking about arrogance and prideful, looking for the light switch, but looking for it together, because it's no good somebody like you or me looking for the light switch for somebody else. You got to get in the dark with them, right? And it's any of these things to turn it around for anybody that's listening, which is the switch again. We're back to flipping the switch. It's going from that. It's as simple as going from that mindset of can't to can, or won't to will, or to volunteer, accept yourself to be curious. Volunteer
So,
yourself to be curious, right?
so this
Because you
is
got to find the switch.
this is fascinating to me. We'll put this down. I don't know when the next time, but we'll. So the title of the next one is "Flip the Switch," and I love that. Next one is "Get in the Dark with Someone." And like when somebody's in that state, and I think when I look back on parenting 7 children, being a father of 7 children, I think the mistake I made, Peter, is I didn't teach my kids empathy. And I don't know that my parents taught me empathy. Tom, he says that the thing he values most about his mom is fighting for the little guy.
Right.
The
And there you go. I just
and
want to hit that one, because I'm not sure anybody can teach us empathy. I think when you suffer as a child, I've used the example of bullying, right? I didn't know what empathy was, certainly when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. What I knew when I was 18 and mentally stronger and physically stronger, it was I had tremendous empathy and compassion for whether it was old women, weak people, vulnerable people, because I was that person once. So in a sense, nobody taught me empathy, I don't think, as we're having this conversation and you bring up empathy, which is exceptionally important, as well as
See, we
compassion.
need to go
But
back and reverse engineer you. When do you feel you had first empathy?
I can't say the first and the biggest thing that I can think of now was the dealing with bullying.
Yeah,
Uh,
what age comes to mind?
well, mildly, I guess, at 9, 10, but majorly at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Just that.
Because the thing is what's interesting about you is you took a path, but a lot of people who are bullied will take a different path. So you took one path and you went and had empathy, but often
Well,
people who
for
get
other people like me that I thought were being bullied, whether it's in a company later, with people, if I saw, what I call a corporate bully, or in the workplace, or whatever, but also vulnerable people, like,
so the thing
the
is, I think
elderly.
if we next time we talk about that, because I think you made a choice because most bullies were bullied, and most bullies, like the people, they make a choice. Like you made a choice. I'm going to be a protector. It's like in the movie. Oh, I forget what it is. It's the sharpshooter, the guy who was in the Navy SEALs or something like that. And he said to his sons, he said, "Sons, there's three types of people in this world. There's sheep, sheepdogs, and wolves. I'm teaching you to be a sheepdog. If you become a wolf, I'll kill you." Like it's like he was like, I'll send you that clip too. So oh my goodness, this has been
Well, that
this
also conjures up things that people know, like the Wolf of Wall Street. And from a business context, that whole thing, which is actually rampant in the stock markets around the world, and they've maybe got a little better, but most of it's been gone underground. But just that's pure money, power, greed in the adult world, right? And people like that don't give a crap about people like you or me or anybody else, if it comes to that matter. And that's that when you're using the expression sheep, sheepdog, sheep, they all make sense, but it's kind of, how do you, we're talking about empathy being a key component of life to learn, but most of us kind of, it comes from having had similar experiences. If you come from nothing, like I'm almost a, if I'm almost trailer, not, I'm not trailer trash, but I grew up in a very poor area. My parents were poor. There was only one way forward, and that was kind of out and up. And it wasn't the drive to go up; it was the drive to overcome. But bullies, and rather being the bullied, I guess I'd probably almost more wanted to be the protector, or the
right.
force against bad, the force against bullies, and that turned into the force for good. So when I was doing my job, or leading other people, it was like, be a force for doing it the right way. And because I'd lived, I'd fallen in the gutter a few times, financially, emotionally, for all kinds of reasons in my youth. And it still happens as an adult, right? It's just you get better at getting out of it or getting through it because you've had practice, right? And then you come back to like now, and you're trying to help people, rise up within themselves. And the lessons that we learned, or I learned at that stage in life, were just a long time ago. And then there's been lots of fabric sewn since then. And it's kind of like you want to get people from where they are, where you were, let's say, or I was 40, 50 years ago, and you want to get them to the current suite of knowledge that will liberate them. So you can say, you be a free thinker, then there's no boundaries, and the collaborator, and have empathy and compassion, all these things that are the fuel on the fire, but you got to first off stoke the fire,
Right.
right? And if life has been fairly easy for most people, especially middle class America, my sons, right? A lot of it is because they didn't get to suffer enough, right? That's not saying they're not happy now or doing better now and on their way,
Right.
the thing, because it's an evolution over decades, right? Of growing up. and it never ends until the day you die. So there's plenty of runway, even though we don't know how long that's going to be. So the only decision you really need to make, if you just look at it, is do I want to live a life of feeling good? It's not about riches and all that. It's just a feeling, right? It didn't. You can feel good whether you're a billionaire. You can feel good whether you're homeless. It's a state of mind. But getting there, the tentacles of how you get there, the fabric of how you get to that point, we all learn from the same stuff effectively. But what's our example as we go along? Because the examples, yeah, they have to be yours in order for you to learn from them and turn it into a repeatable skill. But you also have to learn it from everything around you, because that's what's either working for you or working against you.
Right.
So it's like, if I think if you're not where you want to be and you're looking for more, you kind of got to look back at where you got your, I don't know, negativity from, your closed-mindedness from, and say, if I feel this way now, like I don't understand and I can't comprehend, let's say, it's not that I don't understand and I can't comprehend. It's that there's something stopping me that's telling me inside not to think about what I'm saying, why I am this way. It's like if I'm in the dark room and I can't find the light switch, the only question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to stay here? If the answer to that is no, then what's the next step? If the answer to it is yes, because it's comfortable, my wife is the breadwinner, she works, I just have to find fun things to do, and entertain myself and get my happiness from entertaining myself, right? Because the kids are grown up and there's no work there, because otherwise that was my work, right? And I'm not talking about a stay-at-home woman, it could be a stay-at-home man. It's the same thing. We get into this comfort zone where we're satisfied with our level of happiness that we can endure life, right? And you can start that when you're 18 years old, where you can. I got my first job, and some people stay in that job. My sister worked for the IRS in England for 35 years, right? Was never really happy with it, but was happy enough to stay in it for 35 years, right? Saying I can't do any more. And that, in some ways, it's terrible. On the other hand, she seems to have a pretty good time and a pretty good life, and only complain at me sometimes, like, well, I'm not you. I can't do those things that you do. And they go, okay, well, then as long as you're not jealous or envious, let's be lovingly happy brother and sister. So the only question, even if somebody's listening to this, it's what do you want?
Right.
Do you want more good in your life? If you do, then you have to decide to learn and ask
So
questions.
next time too, we'll go over. Tom Kuntz had shared this with me too, a model a while back, and it was about what you want, and so what do you want in life, and so what do you want? What obstacles are you going to face? What sacrifices do you need to make? What decision are you going to make the decision and do it? From there, we actually discovered that there's 5 levels of want, and so it's going to be a great podcast. Peter, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Always enjoy it. We'll see you. Bye
Good
bye.
talking to you, brother.
Bye bye.